Welcome back to Behind the Tab, a GoTab produced podcast that dives into the evolving world of hospitality through the lens of technology, creativity, and community. Each episode spotlights the game changing innovations, real world operator stories, and GoTab's own team members who are redefining what it means to serve and scale in modern food and beverage. Welcome back to Behind the Tab. We're really happy to have our guest for this episode, Seth Burtis from 5 and 5. Seth, I have this whole thing planned out, and for those who we're not, we're not privy to all the things I cut out of this recording beforehand. It took me a while to get my act together, so I appreciate you taking the time to just banter with me on all things. All things actually New England, all things, a lot of this, we carry a lot of the same, fandoms, if you will, and actually backstories in a certain way. But the backstory that I'm really interested in is the role that you kind of play in hospitality and especially 5 and 5. So, glad to have you here with me. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's another Thursday in paradise. Thanks for having us, Adam, and pleasure to be here. And always good talking with another New England, I say, another Patriots fan. So go Patriots. Hopefully we get another win this week. But
Yeah, there we
yeah,
go.
yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here. Yeah, like you mentioned, here at 5 and 5, we help service many restaurant brands and beverage brands across the board from small to enterprise. And really, we act as an extension of those brands from a consulting perspective, from a managed services perspective. We really want to act as as part of their team, right? And often brands are struggling to expand resourcing. The world we're in today, there's a lot of holding on hiring. So there's more ability to kind of add fractional support. And so obviously restaurants need to continue running and they need technology support. And so often technology can be fantastic, but if you don't have the right people managing it, it's not going to go as far as it needs to go. And so when we come in, we have the experience of working across so many restaurant brands and so many systems that our team's able to provide a unique input for brands from a consulting perspective, and also just kind of be the hands behind the keyboards, making sure menu items are launching properly, price changes are being executed efficiently, and then rollouts of technology are being done properly and really being vetted. Small mistake can have a huge impact. And so when you have a team that's done it before and has a proper process and QA steps that they're going to, it can really mitigate risk and really remove burden from internal support teams.
Yeah, absolutely. When a couple of the different restaurant groups that I've worked for, we would actually put together like some like mini conferences for all of our locations within. Always appreciated bringing in an outside source, an outside resource for them, whether it be a chef in a completely different concept or, front of house managers from different concepts to kind of give their take and their experiences. And we can, take from them as well. So that role that you guys play really can make, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but like in your experience, you feel as though there are a lot of operators out there that are a little bit more thick skinned or strong willed, that
Mm-hmm.
they kind of like they refuse the help of outside sources. Like, I got this, I can do this. And do you run into that a lot?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely more sometimes on the small, medium business side, but it can get into the enterprise where you'll see operators not want to ask for help, not want to have other people involved, whether it's from a budgetary perspective or it's just hey, we want to own this, right? You have an old school mentality in IT that asking for help and having other partners involved can mean you're losing your job or something like that. And so there's some job security concerns, I think, from some individuals, but I think those that do end up kind of giving us a chance and realizing, hey, we're here to help, right? We're here to ensure that some of these things that maybe you just don't have the time to do or in the proper way can kind of be alleviated. We're not here to replace people, right? We're here to supplement. And so definitely, I think as people start working with, they realize, wow, there's an extreme amount of value, right? They've worked with so many different systems, so many different brands that there's very rarely something that comes up that's unique to a brand, right? And so
Mhm.
operators really love that input because I come from the restaurant space, right? I worked in optical because my dad was an optician before, so I understood what it was like to have a father who ran a small business, and when I was 16, I got into restaurants and I did everything under the sun in restaurants. And so I understood that perspective. And so getting into technology, it made it a lot easier when I can speak the language of a restaurant operator. I can understand why when certain things aren't working the way they need to, how big of an impact that can be for those operators. And so absolutely, obviously there's ones that want to be thick-skinned and don't want to ask for help. But I think those that realize that there's help out there and tap into it really reap the benefits from that support.
Yeah, I mean, when you go into a place and that you do get the operators are willing to listen and they reach out and they want your assistance, what's the first thing that you end up recommending to create better systems? Is it more processes? Is it labor? Is it tech? Obviously with GoTab, we see tech questions all the time, but tech doesn't fix bad hospitality, right? Yeah. Tech's just like an assistant to creating a new kind of hospitality. So what are the things that you find that you end up recommending to change that make the biggest impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, it's not always the same answer, right? It depends on the brand, the concept, the technology in place, and kind of what they're coming to us for support. We have so many different elements of our team. But really, at a high level, we try to come into the business from an outside perspective of from a customer, right? First, I need to understand if I'm a customer, what would my feelings be of the technology, the operations of this restaurant? And so we first kind of evaluate from that perspective. And then as we dive in, we start to evaluate what technologies in use. Is there overlap between the technology? Are there things being underutilized in the technology? Are we paying for multiple providers that do the same thing, which is honestly a very common thing where we have brands that will have multiple systems that are competing with each other, and some of those systems aren't really needed or they're redundant. And so kind of evaluating that and seeing, what technology partners do we really want to keep? What are they going to be the long-term recommendations from our team? And then what's the health of the system, right? How is the POS database set up? Is it helpful for the operators or is it cumbersome, right? If there's kiosk ordering, is it natural? Is it a good flow? How about in the kitchen? What kind of capacity do we have in the kitchen? Is the kitchen screens optimized for operational flow? And then really from an online ordering perspective, is it easy to engage? Is it easy to redeem loyalty rewards? How is it when you're ordering? It has to be frictionless. People can't run into technology issues now in 2026, which I got to get used to saying. You can't run into technology issues when you're ordering on a website or app. People will just not engage with you moving forward. And so really understanding that as a high level from a customer. And like I said, diving into the technology, right? Is the menu healthy? Are orders injecting properly? Do we have issues across third parties? Really just kind of a full tech stack evaluation is how we start it. And then obviously as we get into it, when it becomes like a managed services thing that we're offering, we obviously want to understand like what processes do you have, right? We don't want to reinvent the wheel for you. But if you don't have any processes, we will, right? Because you got to establish something. And so we want to come in with our brands, ensure that the proper protocols, proper intake forms, and proper QA are established, and really making sure that they're setting themselves up for success and setting our team up for success, for sure.
I mean, you kind of nailed it just at the end. It's like, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel because, I mean, from my experience, and I say this all the time, like change is hard. Like no matter what, you might be willing to accept the change, but doing too much change all at once is never going to be something that anybody really wants to do. And it's not just one person. It's a whole team of people that have to change a whole lot of things.
Especially operators, right? I've seen situations where restaurants have switched from, chip printers, right, to kitchen screens, and you think that's a no-brainer, right? And then they revert back to chip printers a year later, and you're like, what happened, right? It couldn't have been the technology, right? It had to be an operator learning curve and the training and the setup, right? And so operators are very stubborn, to your point. They don't want change. Some of them have been in the same restaurant kitchen for 20 years, and if you change something on them tomorrow, they're gonna hate you and push back on you all day. I still remember at my times at Tijuana Flats, that one time one of the IT guys switched the no inside button on a mod panel, and the amount of freak out we had from the operators. I was getting calls left and right on the help desk, and by the time we were ready to switch it, it didn't make sense to switch it because now they were used to the way it was, right? And so operators, they're used to it. It has to be seamless. They can't think, right? They have to be able to just go. But there is going to be a learning curve. There is going to be a period of change, and we just have to make sure we're there to support them. You listen to them, you empathize with them, but you got to really, reinforce and push back when we want to just revert just because it's new, right? You can't have that mindset.
Yeah, and just having the experience that you're talking about, like being in restaurants since you were 16, I would say the same thing about myself. That goes a long way. It's like knowing that you have that connection to, I know what you're going through. I've been in your shoes. I continue to be in your shoes in an indirect way.
Mm,
So we can talk the same language. I think the language is a big aspect of it as well. It's like knowing that you said it just now, like you said it in a weird way, but I know what you meant. It's like they can't think. It's not that they can't think.
yeah,
It's
they're,
that
they're in the mode.
they don't
Yeah,
have time to think.
yeah, yeah.
Things just need to work,
Yeah,
right?
it's got to be muscle memory. It's got to be easy for them. It's got to be clear for them. And then when it's a change, there has to be a clear value that you're articulating to them. Why are we doing this? What are we getting out of this? And why is this better? If they don't understand that from the beginning, they're just like, you're just changing something on me for no reason, right? It's like in IT, when you come and you're like, hey, we've got a new password policy, or we have a new computer policy. Why are you doing this to me, right? Like IT is making my life worse, right? We want restaurants to embrace technology. And so often, I always say when you're exploring new technology, please involve an operator at the very beginning, right? Don't make a decision at a corporate level without having true operators who are in the day to day have a say in what technology is being purchased and implemented at locations.
So you talking like you're talking about like at a corporate level, and then obviously operators. A lot
Yeah,
of people that might be listening be like, "Well, I don't have a. I am corporate level. I
yeah,
am
yeah,
the operator is the corporate level."
yeah.
So like, what are some of the differences from working with those kind of operations where there is a corporate level and they're a little bit removed they're from the day to day?
Yeah.
Obviously, from a business standpoint, they're very involved. Versus working alongside restaurateurs that again they are that level that corporate level.
Yeah, I think it's, both are great for us. We enjoy, our relationships across the board regardless. I think when it comes to comparing the two, often what you'll see is when there's more operator level, you get more concise and real feedback in real time. It's often, one of my partners I love working with because, they're not necessarily in the restaurant every day, but they're very close to every single restaurant. They're the smaller brand with, nimble team that's expanding quickly, and they'll soon become a team with a corporate office.
Sure.
They're not already there, but the feedback you get from them is so real, right? Because they're going to their restaurants, they're in there, they're seeing how the technology is being used, and they're curious because they are a restaurant operator who's done that job before. And so they're not yet disconnected into this corporate office mindset. And some brands, are better than others when it comes to a corporate office. Some are disconnected and don't really have that feeling of an operation feeling, kind of, get thought of as sitting in the ivory tower sometimes is the term. But and others are very into it, right? And so it's a hitter. It's different across the board. But I'd say, yeah, I think with the restaurant operator feeling, it's more real time, and you really feel the impact of technology a lot closer, right? You get more enthusiasm. You get more obviously pushback when things aren't working correctly for them. And so I feel like for me, it's more rewarding working with some of these smaller brands because they don't have that team to help them. And so when you act as that team and that true, leadership for them, the value they get and what you see, you feel like you're truly part of that team and you've had that ability to help push that growth forward. Where sometimes in corporate offices, they have that, right? They have that leadership. And so we're more just fractional and supporting on certain elements.
Sure.
So I'd say that's one of the biggest differences I see for sure.
So, I mean, you've been working with all these different levels of partners and what have you, and you guys have been doing this for quite a while. When did 5 and 5 start up?
Yeah, so 5 and 5, we started in the peak of COVID in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was trying to roll out online ordering and loyalty and curbside,
Sure.
and nobody had the resources or couldn't hire, right? And so our founder, Jonathan Chen, had an amazing idea as he was working through, partnerships with Olo of, hey, why don't we just start helping brand? Why don't I start a business that really focuses on digital and helping brands implement digital technology? And so I was one of the first technology people hired. And so almost 5 years here in April, and I came over with, Aloha experience and Olo experience and came over to help really add to that technical team. And we just kept growing from there of, from implementation services to managed services. We just kept hiring good people and giving them the ability to go do good work. And so we still have no outbound sales. Everything we get is referral based. And so going 5 years at this pace, it just shows that the team that we have is fantastic. And we're very fortunate for the partners that we've been able to establish and continue growing with.
Yeah, it's funny. We GoTab has a very similar kind of time frame where it's like, we started in 2016 as a mobile ordering. I always like to say like we were doing it before it was cool or
Yeah.
before it was necessary. So we saw a big boom obviously in 2020, and then a lot of things changed, right? So if we rewind to 2019, Seth, and fast forward to now, what would you say has changed the most of how hospitality brands not only operate, but how they actually succeed and how they win, compared to pre-pandemic, through
Yeah,
pandemic, and then, post-pandemic?
yeah, no, for sure. I think it's a fantastic question. I think, COVID really rapidly accelerated technology from a digital perspective. There were some technologies I think that were going to peak at that time and were surging and then kind of went back down and now are surging again, like kiosk technology. But from a technology perspective, I think what's really changed is online ordering and app ordering and loyalty are no longer like optionals, right? I think in 2019 and before, it was a nice to have, it was a supplemental income. And those things were great. And, third party ordering was great, but it really wasn't optimized. And I think through 2019, really, if there are brands currently using tablets for third party ordering, I would be shocked. I'm sure there's still some of them, but really that
Sure.
that accelerated so many brands from being able to deal with stuff like that to going, no, we have to have an integrated solution. We have to have something to where our operators aren't manually managing 3 tablets. And then from an online ordering perspective, we have to have something that's stable, that offers robust feature sets, that continues to grow with us from a digital perspective, and also can take into effect, how the operator is going to receive this, right? Because all these new order channels and changing of how order channels are being sent to operators is a huge change for a kitchen, right? You're going
Mhm.
from you having people come in the door and ordering to you're having orders from DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, kiosk, call-in orders, and you're still having people come into your restaurant. All these new order channels opened up, and so I think a lot of restaurant brands have started having that reactive approach past, after COVID of how do I expand kitchen capacity? How do I implement things that are more real time in terms of order tracking and giving customers the true ability to understand when they're going to be able to pick up their order and not have people waiting for food when they're arriving. Let's say that's one of the more interesting things I've seen. I think as we've expanded outside of COVID, it's been very interesting to see brands start coming back to some of this other technology. I think when you look at places like California and others where labor is just surging, a lot of these QSR brands are having to figure out how do I offset some of my labor. And so I think what I've seen surging is really that drive-through technology. I think there's a lot of brands who are doing a great job with AI in the drive-through to try to mitigate that labor cost of someone taking that order. And then obviously kiosk ordering. I think kiosk ordering, like I said, in 2019, 2020, I think it was on its way. And then COVID kind of came in and just smacked it down because nobody, it seemed like you'd want to rather order at a kiosk, but a lot of people didn't want to touch it, right? And so I was actually in a restaurant installing one before 5 and 5 and got shut down and kiosks kind of died for that restaurant brand. And but for a lot of them, it's coming back. I've seen it as a very popular thing in the last year or so of how do we get more digital endpoints for our customers to order and ensure that our operators and our labor is being used to make the food and to serve our customers, not sitting there in front of a register taking an order. Some customers still are a little bit hesitant on kiosk, but I think more and more we're seeing customers will receive a kiosk if it works well. They'll use that technology and they'll use drive-through AI. And as long as it works, customers will use it. When it stops working and the technology is frictional, that's when they want to go back to, I want a human to take my order, right? And so that's kind of what I've seen.